Hey everybody, welcome back to the Rig Rundown video series. This is episode number 2, and in this episode I'm going to talk about how I use the Roland JUNO-G. Now, the Roland JUNO-G was manufactured sometime between 2006 and 2010. Don't quote me on that, but it's in that time frame. It's a 61 key keyboard, and it has the Roland Phantom X sound engine in it. There are two primary modes of use for the JUNO-G. One is patch mode and the other is performance mode. And generally, or basically the difference is in patch mode, you can dial up a sound like a piano, for example, and the whole keys are the piano sound. And the difference is when you go to performance mode, you can dial up to 16 sounds and split the keyboard so that you have a piano over here and maybe a flute or a trumpet or something else over here, or you can layer them so that when you hit a key you get both the piano and the trumpet, and you can do that for up to 16 sounds. And I use the JUNO-G in the performance mode, where I divide and layer the keyboard depending on the song, just to suit the needs of the song. So one important thing about how I use the JUNO-G is I disable the keyboard from the internal sound generator. So most digital synthesizers have a switch that allows you to do that. It's called local keyboard mode or something similar for each keyboard. And what that means is when I press a key, if I don't have any of the MIDI stuff connected, it won't generate any sound. So what happens is when I press a key, the JUNO-G sends a MIDI message out the MIDI cable, and in my case it goes up to Ableton, and then Ableton decides what it's going to do with that key, and in my case most of the time it's just going to send it back to the JUNO-G, and the JUNO-G is going to receive it via the MIDI import, and then it's going to send it to the internal sound generator to make some noise. So you might be wondering why I do that, and if there's any issue with latency. Latency being the time it takes from when I press the key to when the data goes to my laptop and back. And I will say that the Roland gear is extremely very good with low latency, so I don't notice any audible issue with latency. And you'll see that I use the same technique with some of the other devices. Now, another thing about it is, well, still, why do I do it? Well, if you look at how I can program the software in Ableton, I can take this key and I can, when it gets to Ableton, I can use it to launch an audio clip that I have saved in Ableton. For example, I could press a key and start the whole sequence, opening sequence to 2112 with just a single key press. I can do that. I can program it that way so that it plays that sequence instead of playing whatever sound would be for that key. Another thing I could do is press a single key, then have Ableton say, oh, I want to make a chord out of that, or multiple keys, so that I can just make it a little bit easier during a live performance to do that. Since I'm not a keyboard player, that makes it easier for me to get the performance right. There's a variety of things like that you can do in Ableton, and I can use the power of Ableton in that way. So that's just a couple of examples of what I could do. And for example, I've dialed up here my patch for distant early warning, and I'll demonstrate that I hit just a single key and it produces a chord effect. So in this sequence here, I'm hitting just a single key. That single key is going to Ableton. Ableton says, oh, let's make a chord out of it, and sends the chord data, so 3 or 4 or 5 notes, however many, sends back to the JUNO-G, and the JUNO-G generates the audio. Okay? So again, you might be asking, well, why all the extra complexity? Well, the reason is because I can take advantage of the power of Ableton. And you'll see also in the subsequent videos when I talk about how I use the PK-5A, basically the path is exactly the same. But the source of the data isn't the same, but the path is basically the same. Data goes in to Ableton and it comes back out to the JUNO-G for making audio. Or, of course, I could program it so that when Ableton gets that key, it can generate audio instead of sending the key back. And actually, I could program Ableton to do all those things at the same time. I mean, I don't do that, but it's available. It's an option. So that's it. That's how I use the JUNO-G. I hope you tune in to the next series in this Rig Rundown series. Thanks.